Have you ever thought about all the stories history kind of leaves out? It's like we only see the surface of the river, but what about what's going on underneath?
Yeah, like the currents we don't see.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dive into today.
Awesome.
We're looking at this play called Tension Across Kinbin, an Untold Story, to explore those hidden depths.
I love this play.
Me too. It takes us to Mbin and Santoh, which is this fictional fondom in Cameroon, and really unpacks this tale of brotherhood, betrayal, and the struggle for unity.
It's fictional, but it's just full of all these cultural details, and it really kind of echoes a lot of the real world conflicts that we see all the time.
Absolutely. And it all starts with Mbin and Santoh, which was once this unified kingdom ruled by Fon Fale. And he had these two sons, Fuden and Laban, and when Fale dies, they each inherit part of the land. But right away, the play hints at a secret that could tear them apart.
Yeah, there's this big question about Fuden's parentage. Like, is he really Fale's son? The play kind of suggests that he might not be,
interesting.
Creating this underlying tension right from the very beginning.
And that tension just explodes with the whole Kinbin River conflict.
Oh, yeah.
What starts as this dispute over water quickly becomes about so much more.
It's totally about power, right? Fuden claiming he's got the only rights to the Kinbin River, denying Laban's people access. It's all about control. It's about excluding them. And we see this, all the time in the real world, too.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking oil or land or even political influence.
Absolutely.
It's all about who's in control.
And then Fuden builds this blockade, which seems like a pretty obvious symbol of division, don't you think?
Oh, totally.
But Laban's warriors, they fight back and they actually break it down.
They do.
I have to say, I was reading that and I was like, go, Laban.
I know. You can't help but root for the underdog,
Totally.
It makes you think about those universal feelings of injustice. Right?
Yeah.
And the desire for fairness. It makes you think, who really has the right to control these resources?
Yeah.
What lengths will people go to secure, what they think belongs to them?
It's a really good point, because it is happening now all over the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
These conflicts, over resources and who's in and who's out.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, the people in charge, they underestimate the will of the people they're trying to control.
That's true.
Big mistake.
So the blockade is broken, but the conflict definitely isn't over.
Oh, no.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the play takes this turn towards the mystical.
I love this part.
Yeah, so both sides are, looking for guidance. But Fuden, he completely ignores the warnings.
Oh, he does.
From Nyoos, the wise one who lives in the evil forest.
When you think about it, Nyoos really embodies that traditional wisdom. He has that connection to the spiritual realm.
Yeah, he's like a shaman, a soothsayer, someone who's really respected in their culture.
Exactly.
So why would Fuden just ignore him?
The play doesn't come right out and say it, but I think it's hinting that Fuden might be so obsessed with power that he can't even see the wisdom of his own culture. He dismisses the warnings. Maybe it's fear, maybe arrogance. Hard to say, really. But it does raise some good questions for us as listeners,
Yeah.
What happens when leaders put their own interests ahead of everyone else?
That's a great question.
What happens to the people they're supposed to be leading?
It all comes back to bite him, though.
It does.
Because Nyoos, he ends up revealing the truth to the elders.
He does. He tells them about Fuden's questionable lineage.
It's a huge turning point in the story.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not only does it expose Fuden's deception, but it really undermines his authority, too. Can he really be the Fon if he's not who he says he is?
Right.
It challenges his whole right to rule.
So what happens to Fuden? Does he get, overthrown? Is there a big showdown?
Well, that's where the play gets really interesting. It leaves us hanging a bit. Fuden and his wives, they end up dead.
Oh, wow.
Under mysterious circumstances. It's not clear how they died, which adds this whole other layer of intrigue.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's like the playwright is saying that the truth always has a way of coming out. No matter how hard you try to hide it.
It definitely makes you think about the consequences, right? Of dishonesty and what people will do to hold on to power.
So what about Laban? Does he become the new Fon?
He does. With Fuden gone, Laban is the obvious choice to rule Mbin and Santoh. And he ends up uniting the kingdom again.
That's great.
It's this moment of hope in the play. Even after all that conflict and betrayal, there's a chance for things to come back together.
So the play's not just a tragedy.
No.
It's about resilience and the possibility of new beginnings.
Exactly. It reminds us that even when things seem totally broken, there's always the potential for healing and rebuilding.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. A divided kingdom, the power struggle over the Kinbin River, a mystical wise man, a shocking twist of fate. But this is just the beginning of our deep dive. What we really want to get into is what this play is trying to say about power, unity, and the choices we make.
Right, right. And to do that, we need to look deeper. We need to look at the cultural context, the symbolism, and all the complex characters that bring this story to life.
Let's do it.
One thing that really struck me about this play is how much it makes you think about tradition.
Yeah.
And like how tradition shapes all the power dynamics.
Totally.
Like the elders, they're not just like background characters.
Right.
They have this huge role in choosing who becomes the fawn.
You know, speaking of the fawn, I gotta admit, before reading this, I wasn't totally clear on what a fondom even was.
Oh yeah, I can see that. It's fondoms are like this unique part of Cameroon's history and culture.
Yeah.
They often go way back, even before colonialism. And they have these really complex social structures with a fawn at the top as both a political and spiritual leader.
So it's not just like a king, it's like a whole system of governing.
Exactly.
Which makes the whole question of Fuden's legitimacy such a big deal.
Oh, totally.
It's not just family drama, it like shakes the foundation of their whole society.
It totally does. Like if people think the fawn's position is illegitimate, it throws everything into question.
Yeah.
Like it's like pulling a thread that unravels the whole tapestry.
Wow, that's a good way to put it. And then there's Nyoos living in the evil forest.
Right.
He's the one who knows the truth about Fuden. Can we talk about the forest for a second? What makes it evil?
Yeah, I don't think it's evil in the way we might think of it, you know?
Okay.
Like good versus evil. It's probably more of a Western interpretation.
Oh, okay.
In their culture, the forest is this place of huge spiritual power, but also danger.
Okay.
It's where they go to seek wisdom, to face their fears, to connect with the supernatural.
So it's more about the unknown.
Yeah.
Like the untamed parts of nature and the spirit world.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which makes Nyoos' role even more interesting.
Oh, totally.
He's not just some wise old man. He's like this bridge between the world we know and the one that's, you know, mysterious.
Yeah. And maybe even a little frightening.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The play is just full of these kinds of symbols. You know, the river, the forest, the rituals, they all have these deeper meanings that go way beyond the surface of the plot.
Like the ritual sacrifice of virgins.
Yeah, that one's definitely hard to read.
It was pretty disturbing, I gotta say.
It is. It's challenging. And the playwright doesn't shy away from it at all.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember, you know,
that
we're experiencing this story through the lens of a specific culture, one that might have really different beliefs than our own.
So even though it's fictional, it's still making us confront those differences, you know? It makes us think about how culture shapes our understanding of the world.
It reminds us that there are tons of ways of seeing things.
Yeah.
And what might seem strange or even wrong to us might be totally normal and meaningful in another culture.
That's true.
We have to remember that.
Okay, so we're seeing how the play uses those cultural details to add all that depth to the story. But it also uses language in a really interesting way.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just everyday speech. It's full of proverbs and metaphors.
Right. That's one of the things I love about this play. It's like it's drawing on the oral storytelling tradition of the region. You know, where language isn't just about information. It's about conveying wisdom and values.
Like that saying, the same rain that makes bitter leaf bitter is the same rain that makes sugar cane sweet.
Oh, I love that one. It speaks to, like, the duality of life, you know?
Yeah.
How the same force can have both good and bad consequences. It reminds us that things aren't always black and white.
Right.
There is a lot of nuance to how the world works.
It's so true.
You know.
And those proverbs aren't just there for decoration.
No, they're not.
They offer insights into the characters.
Absolutely.
And their motivations.
Yeah, they give us this glimpse into their worldview, their beliefs about fate, justice, the nature of power.
The playwright also does a really great job of balancing those heavier themes with moments of humor in everyday life.
Oh, for sure. Like
what?
Remember that scene where Tanjiri, you know, they call them people?
Yeah.
He's singing in the bar.
Oh, yeah. I loved that part.
It's such a vivid, lighthearted scene. It gives us a break from all the tension of the main plot, you know?
Totally.
It reminds us that even when there's all this political turmoil going on, people still find ways to connect, to enjoy the simple things.
It really speaks to the resilience of people.
Yeah.
Our ability to find light, even in dark times.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the setting, the symbols, the language, but what about the characters themselves? Like, how does the playwright use them to explore those themes of unity and division?
You know, what's interesting is the characters aren't just like pieces in some political game. They're complex people.
Yeah.
With their own hopes and fears and dreams, you know?
Right, like Boehm?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's Fuden's wife, right? But she's also this voice of dissent.
Yeah, she's the one who dares to question him.
Even though it's dangerous for her.
It is.
She represents this challenge to his authority. A reminder that even in a patriarchal society, women can be powerful and speak truth to power.
Totally. And then there's Wendy.
Oh, yeah.
She wins the dancing competition.
She does.
And becomes Laban's first wife.
Such a cool character. Her story is really fascinating because it ties into those themes of renewal, and continuity, you know.
So the dancing competition's not just like entertainment.
No.
It's a ritual that symbolizes something bigger.
Exactly. It's about passing down traditions, the hope for a new generation.
And by choosing Wendy, Laban's not just choosing a wife, he's making a statement.
He's saying, I'm committed to our customs and values. It's a subtle way for the playwright to show how personal choices can have a much wider impact. You know?
That's a good point. And that ending with Laban talking directly to the audience.
Oh, yeah.
So powerful.
It's like the playwright is breaking down that wall between the stage and the audience.
Right.
Making us confront the play's message directly.
So instead of giving us all the answers, Laban asks us to think about those Kinbin rivers in our own lives. The places where we see conflict and division.
It's a challenge to think about our own choices, you know, the roles we play in either creating those divisions or working towards unity.
Which brings us to the heart of this whole deep dive, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just about picking apart a play.
No.
It's about trying to understand what it means to be human, you know? The things that pull us apart. And the choices we make in response.
It's about realizing that those Kinbin rivers are everywhere. In our families, our communities, and in the world as a whole.
And the question the play is asking is, what are we going to do about it?
What are we going to do? Well, you know, it feels like the play is saying these conflicts, these Kinbin rivers, they're just part of being human, you know?
I think so.
Like, we can't escape them, but we can choose how we deal with them.
Absolutely.
And one of the most powerful ways to respond, I think, is through this idea of like redemption.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You know, it's not just about punishing whoever did wrong, but recognizing that people can change and grow.
I like that.
Even Fuden, who we might see as the villain at first.
Right.
He's not portrayed as this purely evil guy.
Yeah, he's a complex character.
He is.
The playwright gives us these glimpses of his internal struggle.
Yeah.
You see his vulnerability, the pressure he's under. Maybe even the guilt he feels for his deception. It makes you understand him a little better.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree with what he did.
Right. You can empathize with him.
Yeah. And in the end, his downfall is kind of tragic, you know? It's like a cautionary tale about what happens when you let power corrupt you.
And yet there's this element of redemption in his death, too, you know?
Oh, how so?
Well, it allows Laban to take over and reunite Mbin and Santoh. It's like this cycle of destruction and rebirth.
Wow.
A reminder that sometimes you got to break things down to build them back up stronger.
It makes you think about how often we see that cycle in the real world.
Oh, yeah.
Like with governments and societies.
Totally.
Even relationships, you know.
For sure. Things fall apart, but then new possibilities come up.
And that sense of hope.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes this play so powerful.
I agree.
It's not just this gloomy story about conflict and division.
Right.
It's a story about resilience, about the human spirit and how it just keeps going.
It reminds us that even when things seem hopeless, there's always the potential for something new and better.
And sometimes that means facing hard truths, like the elders do when they go to the forest to see Nyoos, or Laban when he chooses forgiveness over revenge.
Those choices, they take a lot of courage.
They do.
A willingness to go against the grain, to believe in something bigger than yourself.
It's not about ignoring the problems of the world.
No, what?
It's about choosing how you respond to them.
Exactly.
Do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution?
That's the question, isn't it?
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so valuable, you know?
Yeah, I think so too.
It's not just entertainment. It's about making us think, prompting conversations, inspiring action.
It's using this fictional story as a way to look at our own lives.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into tension across Kinbin, what's one last thought you'd leave with our listener?
I'd say, think about the legacy you want to leave behind.
Oh.
What kind of world do you want to see?
Yeah. And what can you do today, even something small, to start making that world a reality?
It's like that ripple effect we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Even a tiny act of kindness can have a huge impact.
It can spread out and create these waves of change.
Maybe those ripples can even reach across those Kinbin rivers that divide us.
Yeah.
Create a current of unity that can transform the whole world.
That's a beautiful thought.
It is, and a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into tension across Kinbin.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's given you a new way of thinking about conflict, unity, and the power of choice.
Yeah. Keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.
See you next time.